The vast expanse of space held no terror for the Kraxan Empire. For millennia, they had carved their dominion across 3 galactic arms, their bioengineered warriors, and crystalline warships bringing countless civilizations to heel. Supreme Commander Vexthal stood aboard the bridge of the Eternal Victory, his iridescent scales reflecting the pale blue light of the insignificant star system they had just entered. Their long-range sensors had detected primitive radio signals, and initial scans revealed a species barely capable of reaching their own moon. Another harvest world, Vexthal declared, his secondary hearts beating in a rhythm of anticipation. The crew around him continued their preparations, their movements precise and practiced. They had done this hundreds of times before. Identify a developing world, demonstrate overwhelming force, and add another species to their ever-growing empire of servants. Earth, as the inhabitants called it, seemed particularly ripe for conquest. Their initial scans showed a fractured society, thousands of different governments and military technology that relied primarily on chemical propellants and crude nuclear devices. The Kraxan Empire's quantum weaponry and phase-shifted shields would render any resistance futile. Or so they thought. The first strike was textbook perfect. Vexthal deployed his standard invasion fleet, 50,000 warriors in drop pods, targeting major military installations across the planet's northern hemisphere. The humans' primitive radar systems barely registered the incoming attack until it was too late. But when the pods landed, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic and surrender, the humans fought back. Not with desperate, uncoordinated resistance, but with a ferocity that left the first wave of Kraxan warriors sending desperate distress signals back to the fleet. Vexthal watched in disbelief as the tactical display showed pod after pod going dark. "Impossible," he muttered, his scales shifting to a deeper shade of purple, a sign of growing concern. "Show me ground footage." The holographic display flickered to life, showing scenes that would forever change his understanding of warfare. Human soldiers, despite their relatively primitive armor and weapons, were adapting with frightening speed. They had already figured out that Kraxan personal shields had a vulnerability to rapidly repeated impacts, and were using their primitive automatic weapons to overwhelming effect. But it wasn't just their tactical adaptation that disturbed Vexthal. It was their sheer tenacity. He watched as a human soldier, grievously wounded, continued fighting even after losing a limb. In another feed, a small group of humans deliberately drew Kraxan forces into a trap, sacrificing themselves to destroy a much larger enemy force. By the first egg, his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Xerix, whispered, "They don't stop. Even when they should be dead, they keep fighting." The most shocking footage came from New York City. A Kraxan heavy assault unit, equipped with the latest biomechanical combat suits, had been reduced to scattered remnants by human forces using nothing but their environment and improvised explosives. The humans had flooded underground tunnels, used their own vehicles as weapons, and demonstrated a level of tactical creativity that bordered on the insane. "Full retreat," Vexthal ordered, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his gut. "Recall all ground forces immediately." "Supreme Commander," Xerix protested, "surely we can't be defeated by primitives." Vexthal's scales shifted to the deep red of battle rage. "Look at the casualty reports, Xerix. We've lost 30% of our initial force in less than 6 hours. These aren't primitives. They're something else entirely. Something we've never encountered before." As the surviving Kraxan forces retreated to their ships, human military forces were already adapting their weapons, incorporating observed alien technology into their arsenal. More disturbing still, Vexthal's sensors detected increased energy signatures worldwide. The humans weren't cowering in fear. They were mobilizing on a global scale. "Send word to the High Command," Vexthal ordered, watching as the blue-green planet receded on his view screen. "We've awakened something unprecedented. These humans, they don't fight like a species defending territory. They fight like apex predators who've been challenged in their hunting grounds." In the days that followed, As the Kraxan fleet regrouped at the system's edge, Vexthul pored over the battle footage. He saw humans fighting with broken bones, continuing to resist while suffering radiation poisoning, and displaying a level of unit cohesion that rivaled the Kraxan's own bioengineered troops. But most terrifying of all was their adaptability. Every tactic the Kraxans employed was countered, analyzed, and improved upon by the humans with frightening speed. "We thought we were dealing with primitives," Vexthul recorded in his battle log, "but we've discovered something far more dangerous, a species that transforms everything, even defeat, into a weapon. The High Command must understand. These humans don't just wage war, they evolve through it, and they've just begun their evolution." As the Eternal Victory prepared for faster-than-light travel, Vexthul made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. This wouldn't be a simple conquest. It would be a true war against an enemy unlike any the Kraxan Empire had faced in its long history. And deep in his primary heart, Supreme Commander Vexthul felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of warfare: doubt. The Kraxan Empire's first assault had lasted mere hours, but it transformed human civilization forever. Within days of the alien retreat, ancient rivalries crumbled as humanity faced an existential truth. They were not alone in the universe, and they were at war. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the underground facility beneath the Himalayas, surrounded by the greatest scientific minds Earth had cobbled together. Before her lay the twisted wreckage of a Kraxan combat suit, its crystalline components still humming with residual energy. 3 months ago, she had been working on quantum computing theories at MIT. Now she was part of humanity's desperate race for survival. The beauty of it, she explained to the assembled military leaders, is that they never expected us to reverse engineer their technology so quickly. They thought their systems were too advanced for us to comprehend. She pointed to the holographic display showing the inner workings of the alien tech. But they made a crucial mistake. They assumed complexity equals superiority. Around the world, similar breakthroughs were happening at an unprecedented pace. In Brazil, engineers had already adapted Kraxan shield technology into portable defense systems. Russian scientists had cracked the basics of their FTL communications. And in Nigeria, a team had discovered how to detect the unique energy signatures of Kraxan ships, even when cloaked. But humanity's real advantage wasn't just in technology. It was in their ability to think differently. Colonel James Rodriguez, who had led the successful defense of Mexico City during the first attack, now headed the Global Defense Initiative Strategy Division. "The Kraxans fight like an empire," he told his international team of military strategists. "They expect submission or destruction, but we're going to fight like humans. Adaptable, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless when necessary." The first test of humanity's new capabilities came sooner than expected. Kraxan scout ships appeared in the Kuiper Belt, clearly preparing for a second invasion. But this time, Earth was ready. The scouts encountered a solar system bristling with defenses that hadn't existed 3 months ago. Hidden bases on Mars and Venus housed humanity's first space-worthy warships, cobbled together from reverse-engineered Kraxan tech and human ingenuity. Asteroid bases concealed missile platforms that used simplified versions of alien weapons combined with human nuclear technology, less elegant than Kraxan weapons, but devastatingly effective. The scouts never had a chance to report back. Earth's first space battle lasted less than an hour, and every alien ship was destroyed. But humanity didn't celebrate. They prepared. They knew the real battle was yet to come. In orbit above Earth, the International Space Station had been transformed into a command center for humanity's growing space force. Admiral Helen Wong watched as construction drones swarmed around Earth's first true battlecruiser, the Phoenix. The ship was ugly by Kraxan standards, a hybrid of human and alien technology that looked like it had been built by particularly aggressive scavengers. Which, in a way, it had been. "It's not pretty," Admiral Wong admitted to her staff, "but it doesn't need to be. It just needs to kill Kraxans. The Phoenix represented humanity's greatest achievement and their greatest gamble. Unlike the crystalline perfection of Kraxan ships, the Phoenix was deliberately crude in places, using simple solutions where the aliens would have used complex ones. Its weapons were a mix of refined alien tech and brute force human engineering. Most importantly, it could be reproduced quickly, without the need for the complex biological-mechanical integration the Kraxans relied on. Deep in the Himalayan facility, Dr. Chen made another breakthrough. Studying captured Kraxan biological data, she discovered something that changed everything. Their entire empire is built on perfection, she reported to the Global Defense Council. Their ships, their weapons, even their soldiers, everything is engineered to be the perfect solution to a specific problem. But that's their weakness. They've engineered out their ability to improvise. This insight shaped humanity's entire defense strategy. Instead of trying to match Kraxan perfection, Earth's forces embraced chaos and improvisation. Military units trained to switch tactics mid-battle, using whatever tools were available. Engineers designed weapons and ships that could be easily modified in the field. Every piece of technology was built with redundancies and backup systems that would have horrified the efficiency-obsessed Kraxans. 6 months after the first attack, Earth had been transformed. The old nations still existed, but they had been superseded by a unified military and scientific command structure. Humanity's first space fleet numbered over 100 ships, crude by Kraxan standards, but lethal nonetheless. And in laboratories and factories around the world, new weapons were being forged that combined the best of both worlds. Admiral Wong stood on the Phoenix's bridge, watching Earth grow smaller as they conducted their first deep space trial. The ship's systems were a cacophony of alien and human technology working together in ways the Kraxans would have considered impossible. But it worked, and that was all that mattered. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Operation Prometheus is now active. The next time the Kraxans come, we're not just going to defend Earth. We're going to show them exactly what humanity is capable of." As the Phoenix disappeared into FTL, leaving a wake of distorted spacetime that would have made Kraxan engineers cringe, humanity prepared for war. They knew the Kraxans would return with a full invasion fleet. But this time, they would face not just a primitive species, but an awakened giant that had taken their own technology and transformed it into something new and terrifying. The real war was about to begin. Supreme Commander Vexful's worst fears materialized as the main Kraxan invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace. Instead of finding a vulnerable Earth awaiting conquest, they faced an entire solar system transformed into a fortress. But it wasn't the orbital defenses or the crude but effective human ships that sent shivers through his scales. It was the battle footage from the first wave of engagements. "Play it again," he commanded, his inner eyelids flickering rapidly as he studied the holographic display. The scene showed a squad of elite Kraxan warriors, genetically engineered for combat perfection, being systematically destroyed by human special forces in the ruins of what had once been Dubai. The humans moved differently than any species the Kraxans had encountered. Where Kraxan warriors relied on precision and practiced formations, the humans flowed like water, alternating between disciplined coordination and savage improvisation. They used their environment in ways that seemed to defy military logic, turning debris into weapons and defeat into opportunity. In low Earth orbit, the battle raged across a field of artificial debris and tactical mines. The Kraxan fleet's perfect formations were shattered by hit-and-run attacks from ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. The humans had created a three-dimensional battlefield that negated the Kraxans' superior numbers and technology. Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding the stealth frigate Shadow Dancer, demonstrated why humans had become the Kraxans' worst nightmare. Her ship, a hybrid of stolen Kraxan tech and human innovation, dove through the debris field, using electromagnetic pulses to disable Kraxan shields in ways their designers had never anticipated. "They expect us to fight by their rules," she transmitted to her squadron. "Let's show them how humans hunt." The Shadow Dancer's tactics spread through the human fleet like a virus, each captain adapting and improving upon the strategy. The Kraxans found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to evolve its tactics in real time, sharing and implementing new ideas with devastating speed. On the ground, the situation was even more terrifying for the Kraxan forces. During one particularly brutal engagement in the Amazon rainforest, a single human soldier, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera, held off an entire Kraxan platoon for 3 days. He used the dense vegetation, improvised traps, and psychological warfare to break down the aliens' morale. When finally captured, Rivera's body showed injuries that should have killed him several times over. The Kraxan medical officers were stunned to discover that human biology, far from being primitive, possessed remarkable regenerative capabilities and pain tolerance that their own engineered soldiers couldn't match. How? The Kraxan interrogator demanded. How do you continue fighting beyond your physical limits? Rivera's blood-stained grin haunted the aliens' nightmares. Because we choose to, he answered, before triggering an attack that freed an entire prisoner camp. The psychological impact on the Kraxan forces was devastating. Their warriors, bred for generations to be perfect soldiers, began to show signs of fear, not of dying, but of facing humans in combat. Stories spread through the ranks about human soldiers who fought on despite mortal wounds, who turned defeat into victory through sheer willpower, who learned and adapted faster than their combat computers could analyze. Admiral Wong, commanding the Earth fleet from the Phoenix, recognized this psychological advantage and exploited it ruthlessly. She authorized the deployment of ghost teams, special forces units that specifically targeted Kraxan command and control structures, appearing seemingly out of nowhere to strike at the enemy's psyche as much as their bodies. In the asteroid belt, a human mining vessel, retrofitted with salvage Kraxan weapons, demonstrated another aspect of human warfare that terrified the aliens. When cornered by 3 Kraxan cruisers, instead of surrendering, the captain rammed his ship into the enemy formation at relativistic speeds. The resulting explosion created a new asteroid field and a new legend in the Kraxan fleet about human unpredictability. Vexthal watched his empire's perfect military machine begin to crack under the strain of facing an enemy that refused to break. His warriors, bred for victory, didn't know how to handle an adversary that turned defeat into a weapon, that learned from every failure, that seemed to become stronger with each setback. They're not just fighting us, he recorded in his personal log. They're learning from us, adapting our strengths, and turning our own perfection against us. We created our warriors through centuries of careful breeding and genetic engineering. The humans, they forged their warriors in the heat of battle itself. The turning point came during the Battle of Mars. The Kraxans deployed their elite guard legion, warriors who had never known defeat, against the human defenders. The battle lasted 17 hours. When it was over, the undefeated had been defeated, not by superior technology or numbers, but by an enemy that refused to fight according to any predictable pattern. As the Kraxan fleet regrouped near Saturn, Vexthal faced a terrible realization. His empire had spent millennia perfecting the art of war, creating the ultimate warriors through science and selective breeding. But in doing so, they had become predictable. The humans, with their chaotic, adaptive nature, their ability to improvise, and their sheer bloody-minded determination, had become something his perfect warriors couldn't counter. We're not fighting primitives, he told his war council. We're fighting an entire species of natural-born warriors who treat impossibility as a personal challenge, and they're just getting started. The Kraxan Empire's High Command received Supreme Commander Vexthal's report with disbelief. For the first time in their 10,000-year history, their forces weren't just being defeated, they were being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive just months ago. On the massive holographic display aboard the Eternal Victory, Vexthal watched as humanity launched what they called Operation Prometheus Unchained. It wasn't just an attack, it was a revolution in warfare that made his scales pale with both terror and admiration. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace, not in perfect formation, but in what appeared to be complete chaos. Ships appeared at seemingly random vectors, their crude hybrid drives leaving trails of distorted spacetime that played havoc with Kraxan targeting systems. Behind them came their secret weapon, massive cargo ships that the Kraxans initially dismissed as support vessels. By the first egg, Vexthal's tactical officer whispered, "They've weaponized their own industrial capacity." The cargo ships were mobile factories, built to manufacture and launch waves of autonomous drones mid-battle. While individually primitive compared to Kraxan fighters, these drones operated with swarm intelligence that adapted and evolved during combat. Every drone destroyed provided data that made the next wave more effective. Admiral Helen Wong, commanding the human fleet from the newly commissioned supercarrier Humanity's Dawn, had taken the lessons learned from earlier battles and turned them into a devastating strategy. "We don't need to match their perfection," she transmitted to all ships. "We just need to overwhelm it." The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries. The humans didn't just fight. They rewrote the rules of space combat in real time. Their ships performed maneuvers that Kraxan tactical computers dismissed as suicidal, until they succeeded. They used the physics of space itself as a weapon, creating gravitational eddies that trapped Kraxan ships in kill zones. But the real devastating blow came from within the Kraxan Empire itself. Sub-Commander Zurix, watching his perfect military discipline crumble before human chaos, made an unprecedented decision. He contacted the human command directly. "Your species," he transmitted, "fights like the legendary world enders our ancestors feared. You don't just defeat your enemies, you transform defeat itself into victory. Some of us have begun to understand that this war was a mistake from the beginning." The transmission sent shockwaves through the Kraxan fleet. For the first time in their history, a high-ranking commander had not just acknowledged defeat, but praised an enemy's superiority. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Across the battlefield, Kraxan ships began experiencing something they had never trained for: mass defections. Entire battle groups, led by younger commanders who had faced humans in combat and developed a grudging respect for their capabilities, began powering down their weapons. Dr. Chen, monitoring the battle from Earth's new quantum defense center, noticed something extraordinary. "The Kraxans aren't just losing a war," she reported to the Global Defense Council. "They're experiencing a cultural revolution. Their encounter with us has forced them to question their entire philosophy of perfection." The human counteroffensive pressed its advantage, but not in the way the Kraxans expected. Instead of demanding unconditional surrender, humanity offered something unprecedented: collaboration. Ships that surrendered were treated not as defeated enemies, but as potential allies. Vexthal, watching his perfect military machine disintegrate, faced the most difficult decision of his long life. The humans had not just defeated his forces, they had demonstrated a form of warfare that made the Kraxan Empire's pursuit of perfection seem fundamentally flawed. "All ships," he broadcast on all frequencies, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition about to be broken. "Stand down. We have encountered not just a superior force, but a superior way of thinking. The humans don't win because they're stronger or more advanced. They win because they never stop evolving, never stop adapting, never accept any limitation as permanent." The Battle of Saturn's Rings, as it would become known, ended not with a devastating final exchange of fire, but with something unprecedented: a dialogue. Human ships moved alongside their former enemies, crews beginning the complex process of building bridges between two fundamentally different ways of thinking about war, progress, and civilization itself. Admiral Wong stood on the bridge of Humanity's Dawn, watching the massive Kraxan ships power down their weapons. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them that Operation Prometheus didn't just give us victory. It gave us something far more valuable: the chance to transform an enemy into an ally." As the combined fleet began its journey back to Earth, Vexthal made one final entry in his war log. We came to conquer what we thought was a primitive species. Instead, we found something far more precious, a mirror that showed us the flaws in our own pursuit of perfection. The humans don't just fight wars. They transform everything they touch, even their enemies. And perhaps in the end, that is the greatest victory of all. 5 years after the Battle of Saturn's Rings, the Sol system had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a crucible of innovation where human chaos and Kraxan precision merged to create something entirely new. The massive shipyards orbiting Mars told the story. Sleek Kraxan crystalline ships being retrofitted with human-designed systems, while Earth vessels incorporated the best of alien technology. Supreme Commander Vexthal, now serving as the first Kraxan ambassador to Earth, stood beside Admiral Wong in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly in Geneva. Below them, human and Kraxan engineers worked side by side, their former enmity transformed into a partnership that was reshaping the galaxy. "Did you ever imagine," Wong asked, watching a hybrid human Kraxan ship take flight, "that your defeat would lead to your empire's greatest advancement?" Vexthal's scales shifted to the deep blue of contemplation. "We sought perfection through control. You showed us perfection through adaptation. The galaxy will never be the same." Indeed, the galaxy was changing rapidly. News of humanity's victory over the mighty Kraxan Empire had spread, drawing delegations from dozens of species. They came not just to establish diplomatic relations, but to learn humanity's unique approach to problem-solving, their ability to merge seemingly incompatible technologies, and their knack for turning disadvantages into strengths had made Earth a center of galactic innovation. Dr. Chen, now heading the Interspecies Technology Exchange, had created something the Kraxans had never imagined, a research methodology that deliberately introduced chaos into technological development. "Innovation doesn't come from perfecting what we know," she explained to a group of alien scientists. "It comes from embracing what we don't know and turning our failures into stepping stones." The results were revolutionary. Human Kraxan hybrid ships could now traverse distances that pure Kraxan vessels never could, using what they called controlled chaos drive, a system that deliberately created and harnessed spatial instabilities. Human adaptability combined with Kraxan precision had created something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. But perhaps the most profound changes were cultural. The Kraxan Empire, for millennia a rigid hierarchy built on the pursuit of perfection, was experiencing a renaissance. Young Kraxans began adopting human practices, learning to improvise and adapt rather than rely solely on established procedures. Some even started modifying their own biotechnology, introducing controlled imperfections that allowed for greater adaptability. Colonel Rivera, now a general leading the Joint Human Kraxan Defense Force, had become a legend among both species. His training programs merged human creativity with Kraxan discipline, creating warriors who could shift between perfect precision and controlled chaos as needed. "We're not erasing what makes each species unique," he would tell his mixed species units. "We're learning to dance between our differences." The impact rippled across the galaxy. Other species, long dominated by the Kraxan Empire, began seeking alliances with Earth. They saw in humanity a different kind of strength, not the overwhelming force of empire, but the adaptive resilience of evolution itself. Humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology or their tactics, Vexthal wrote in his final memoir. It was their fundamental nature, their ability to take any situation, no matter how desperate, and transform it into an opportunity. They turned our invasion into a catalyst for their own evolution, our technology into a foundation for their innovation, and our enmity into an alliance that has made both our species stronger. 10 years after first contact, humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They hadn't just defeated a superior force, they had transformed the very nature of galactic civilization. The hybrid ships now emerging from Earth's shipyards weren't just vessels. They were symbols of a new way of thinking about progress itself. Admiral Wong, standing on the bridge of the newest flagship, The Convergence, a vessel that represented the peak of human Kraxan cooperation, looked out at the stars with a sense of pride and purpose. "We never wanted to just win a war," she told her mixed human Kraxan crew. "We wanted to win a future. And that future belongs to those who can adapt, innovate, and transform." As the Convergence prepared for its maiden voyage, carrying representatives from both species to explore unknown regions of space, the galaxy watched with anticipation. Humanity had proven that true strength didn't lie in perfection or power, but in the ability to evolve, to transform, and to turn even the greatest challenges into opportunities for growth. The age of rigid empires was over. The era of adaptive civilization had begun, and at its heart was the species that had taught the galaxy's greatest military power that true perfection lies not in flawlessness, but in the endless capacity to change, grow, and become something new. "We came to conquer them," Vexthal's final transmission read, but instead they conquered the future itself. And in doing so, they freed us all from the prison of our own perfection.